G'day, welcome to Waller Customs. I'm Brett Waller. I've got something a little different today, a video that I've wanted to do for a couple of years now, like 2-3 years nearly. It's my tips and tricks to help get your project to 10,000 votes on LEGO Ideas and hopefully get approved. I'm using what I call the LEGO Ideas equation. So most people watching probably know this, but LEGO Ideas has a website where anyone can submit an idea they might have for a LEGO set they might want to see get made. They present pictures and a build of what that set might be. They present it to the public, and once it reaches that 10,000 votes, LEGO will review it, and they'll go through a whole review process where they see if there's a business case for it, see if there's a marketing opportunity for it, to see if they can acquire the license in the case where it's based on a movie or a TV show. And they go through this whole committee-based setup where they decide what becomes a real set and what gets rejected. And if you are lucky enough to be one of the ones approved, you become what's called a fan designer. That gets to why should you listen to me on your tips and tricks for LEGO Ideas. Is because I'm one of the few people in the world who've got 2 projects made through this system. I've got about 7, possibly 8 now I think, projects to 10,000 votes, and 2 of those have been approved and one's currently under review. So that's my experience with the platform over 10 years. I'm trying to impart some of that knowledge to you so that can help you get your project to 10,000 votes, hopefully, and possibly get approved, so you can also be a LEGO fan designer. So the impetus for this video is I've had a lot of people over the years ask me, how can I get my project to 10,000 votes, or how can you help me get my project to the 10,000 votes? And there's no easy solution to that. There's a lot of factors that play into getting your project to 10,000 votes. And ultimately, I kind of break it down into these 4 rules, or 4 points that are multiplied against each other in my math equation, my LEGO Ideas equation, that help combine to present your project in the best possible light. And that's what I'll go over in detail in future videos. I'll go through each of these points of the math equation in their own video, but I'll just do a quick summary today to kind of get you halfway there, and hopefully you can stick around and watch the other videos later. But before we even get to my math equation,
read the rules on the LEGO Ideas website.
I cannot stress that enough. They're there for a reason. I've seen a bunch of people who have gone all the way through the process of building a LEGO Ideas project and then complain when it's been rejected, because that's actually a process when you submit a project to LEGO Ideas. Before it even goes up for vote, that LEGO have to approve of it, and that approval encapsulates whether it's a right fit for LEGO, may be too mature, or may include themes that LEGO doesn't want to associate with, such as war, violence, religion, things like that. So make sure you've read the rules. But if you've decided to base your project on a TV show or a movie, you can actually go onto the LEGO Ideas website now, and there's a bunch of pre-approved licenses and IP, intellectual property. So you can type something in, and not all things have been reviewed or pre-reviewed. So you may find that you might try to submit something that isn't actually allowed, but they haven't pre-approved it. But in most cases, you can type something in, like Star Trek, for example. It's not allowed because I think another brick building company owns the rights to that license. Doing a little groundwork beforehand will save you a lot of time, potentially a lot of heartbreak later on after you've done a lot of work, finding out that you can't actually submit it. Also, before you create your project, check what's going on in the LEGO Ideas community at the moment. For example, what I was talking about with the Star Trek license being owned by a different company, there was a case where someone had created a project for the TV show The Office, which has now been approved, but that project had been submitted multiple times and rejected multiple times. They never tell you why a project's been rejected, they just say it's been rejected. There was another brick building company who had the license to The Office, and that was very likely the reason why that project was rejected so many times previously, because as soon as that license expired, LEGO is now able to do that through LEGO Ideas, and it was approved recently. Keep an eye on what the trends are in LEGO Ideas, and that doesn't necessarily mean you have to follow those trends. It just means you know what the current state of LEGO Ideas is and the kind of things that get approved. Because I've kind of found that this is not part of that equation, LEGO Ideas equation, but I think it's a very strong point to make for any LEGO Ideas project. Is LEGO Ideas projects tend to appeal to people, or LEGO wants them to appeal to people who aren't into LEGO. If you look at the history of all the LEGO Ideas project, there's kind of a pattern there emerging where they're kind of targeting markets who aren't necessarily into LEGO and trying to bring them into the LEGO community. So, for example, Ghostbusters, I've anecdotally had so many people, no, I didn't even mention it, Ghostbusters and Seinfeld are the 2 projects that I had approved through LEGO Ideas that I'm the fan designer for. And I've had anecdotally so many people tell me that Ghostbusters was their first LEGO set as an adult. That kind of situation is where someone who's into Ghostbusters might see that and buy it, not necessarily being into LEGO, but if 1 out of 10 or even 1 out of 100 people who buy LEGO Ghostbusters go on to buy another LEGO set and go on to become an AFOL, adult fan of LEGO, that's LEGO expanding the market in general. I've kind of noticed that as a pattern within LEGO. The licenses they approve, even the ship in the bottle and the globe, things like that, they're things that you would display on an office desk or something. And they've really tried to expand that market into the adult friendly display type builds. So that's one category that I have in my head of display builds. So you've got globe, ship in the bottle, typewriter, piano, things you might see an older person who's not necessarily into LEGO having displayed in their home. So if they buy the globe, they might go back and buy the piano because they like the experience of building with LEGO. And then you've got things like the BTS. There's a huge market for that band, and LEGO wants to tap into that, because if a fraction of those people come in and want to buy more LEGO, they've expanded their market. It may not have been really apparent, because that BTS was not apparent to me at all as a potential viable product in LEGO Ideas, but that's something to think about. Having said that, I think being a fan of something goes a long way. So whether it's an original idea or a licensed thing, I think you can really tell when people submit things that people don't have their heart in. It's something they want to see themselves. The passion comes through via that. So in my cases, I loved Ghostbusters, I loved Seinfeld. I had no idea that Seinfeld would be approved. I thought it would be way too mature, not within their wheelhouse at all. I thought, yep, it'll get rejected, and I'll get as a consolation prize, if your project gets rejected, you get $500 US to spend on the LEGO online store. I thought that'll be my consolation prize. I had fun, this was great, but it got approved.
But I don't want to be a Lego!
So yeah, I think that a passion for an idea really comes through. But I still haven't got to the math equation yet. So the math equation in my head is, you have your idea, whatever that might be. It might be something original, it might be something licensed. That idea has a certain amount of potential that you can leverage, and you leverage that potential by your build and your presentation and your promotion. What I mean by that is, you can have a fantastic idea, but if your build isn't up to par or your presentation isn't quite as good as it could be, you're not maximizing the effect that that idea can have. That's where the LEGO Ideas equation comes from, the multiplication. It's your idea multiplied by your build, multiplied by your presentation, multiplied by your promotion. So in that case, a fantastic idea with a subpar build can then not make the most of that potential of that idea. You could have a fantastic idea with a fantastic build, but then maybe your photos aren't really showing your build in the best light and aren't really presenting the full concept of what you're trying to achieve through the LEGO Ideas project. Then you're letting down your idea and you're not making the most of that multiplication. Finally get to the promotion, which is somewhat tied into the presentation. So the presentation goes a long way towards informing your promotion, and if you do a good enough job with the presentation, you may not have to do as much promotion because the project can speak for itself to a certain degree. You can let that presentation do a lot of legwork and explaining, because that's really what you're doing with the presentation, is you're explaining what your project is, encapsulating that with as few words, possibly with no words would be the best way of doing it. You just want to visualize really quickly and really easily what your project is, what it means, and if it's a project that's tied to a license, what that means to the people who would potentially be voting for it. So what does that mean to me as a fan of Seinfeld or of Ghostbusters? Sometimes it's just seeing your favorite characters recreated in Lego form. There's a certain charm to that. So yeah, I do want to speak a little bit about the chances you have for Lego Ideas, what your potential is. I'll try and keep it pretty quick because it can get pretty boring with statistics, as fun as I think they are. So as of late March 2022, there's currently been 34,666 projects submitted through Lego Ideas. Unfortunately, 99.87% of those will fail. And what I mean by fail is you'll either get rejected if it actually gets to 10,000 votes, or expire. And what expire means on the Lego Ideas platform is when you submitted a project, you've got 60 days, I think it is, to reach 100 votes, and then you get more time again until you reach 1,000 votes, and then you get more time again, and then at 5,000 votes you get more time again. And if that time runs out before you've reached those milestones, your project expires. And you can resubmit it, but it's generally not a good sign if your project hasn't reached that milestone. It wouldn't just be a case of resubmitting it as is. It would be taking a step back and maybe retooling the design or maybe if it's the idea, for example, like I've had an idea for a Mr. Bean project for years, and I couldn't really get something solid I thought was a solid product that would be on a shelf at the end. I had Mr. Bean's car and Mr. Bean on his chair on top of it, and it didn't feel full enough to be a real Lego idea set or a product. I tried doing his apartment and doing other vignettes to go with it, but I couldn't really wrap my head around it. I never submitted it, but that's a case where if you've done a certain aspect of an idea, maybe redirecting it to a different concept based around that idea, or just revisiting the build maybe, or revisiting how you've presented it, that may be all you need to do. But 98.95% of all projects will expire. That leaves 1.24% of projects will hit 10,000 votes, which isn't great, but it's not bad either. 1 in 100 chance roughly. Of all projects that are submitted, only 0.13% turned into a real set. So I don't want to leave you on a downer, because that is not great numbers, but that's why I'm here, to try and help you maximize your projects and try and get the most out of it, whatever your concept might be. But that's kind of where I sit. My mental state with Lego Ideas Project is to expect failure, and that's not to say that you will fail, it's just to say that going into it, if you expect failure, you'll try and push yourself that little bit further to avoid it. I still expect it, but in that regard, I know the odds aren't in my favor, so I need to work harder to try and push my project over the line and make it even better. And even once it's got the 10,000 votes, it doesn't mean it's going to be a success. There's not great odds, 12% odds to actually be approved. It doesn't really matter what you do once you've got to 10,000 votes. It's kind of up to the Lego gods that you can't guess it. Even if you are lucky enough to get to 10,000 votes but unlucky enough to not be approved, if your project is an original project, not based on a license, there is a chance you may be able to be a Lego designer in another way. I don't know if they'll continue the platform, but Lego's bought out Bricklink and have the Bricklink designer program, where they've taken original projects through Lego Ideas that haven't been approved, and then they've given a second chance via crowdfunding, which I was a part of myself with my Seasons in Time calendar, which unfortunately didn't reach the crowdfunding goal, but I had that opportunity there to have another chance. And perhaps you might have a second chance at becoming a Lego designer if you missed the first chance. So hopefully hang around and check out some of my other videos while we wait for the next installations of this, where I'll go over in more detail of each of those points of that mathematical equation: the idea, the build, the presentation, and the promotion. I'll go over those in a video each for each of those topics, because I think they really need to be covered separately, and I'll spend a bit of time on it, probably about 10 or so minutes each. And maybe I'll do a wrap-up video at the end where you can, if you have any questions, I can either answer them throughout, or maybe I'll push them towards the end and do them in one hit, and maybe do an analysis on my successes and failures as a Lego Ideas fan creator, where I've submitted 14 or 15 projects, 7 or 8 reached 10k, and the rest are failures. So maybe we can look at how and why some of those succeeded and failed. But anyway, thanks for watching. See you next time.